Reporting back to the right hemisphere. There was a lot of the left hemisphere struggling with reality in the last few pages, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, as we have seen, the occupational hazard of the left hemisphere is to believe that its necessarily narrower representations constitute the reality. The danger applies here too. We are tempted to treat panentheism as a left hemisphere intellectual representation, a source of argument, rather than something intuited by the right hemisphere as a source of wonder. We should resist the temptation to take it as gospel, which is why I talked about a speculative theology of panentheism. There are no certainties here. In a well-known saying attributed to Eugene Gendlin, we think more than we can say, we feel more than we can think, we live more than we can feel, and there is much else besides. But the attempt to use language is not irrational. The struggle, as I say, is not wasted effort. It is merely not enough. It has been a consistent argument of this book that the left hemisphere is a fine servant but a disastrous master, and that its results need returning to the right hemisphere for assessment of their validity and reintegration into a now enriched vision of the world. It is their consistency with what the right hemisphere has intuited with greater richness, but less of an argumentative structure, that is required. The most we can hope for is some sense that an analytic theology might at least seem true to, faithful to, the intuited perceptions of the right hemisphere expressed, as they tend to be, in terms of metaphor and myth. How does panentheism fare? This extraordinarily redolent mythos appears to intuit the way in which I believe everything comes into being, not just in the cosmos at large, but for us phenomenologically through the interaction of the hemispheres. The first act is not the making of something happen, but the open receptive attentional field offered by the right hemisphere in which all new experience begins. It creates a space for something to be zimzum. The attempt is then made to pour whatever is received by the right hemisphere into the various categories, verbal or otherwise, that the left hemisphere brings to bear on it, but these prove inadequate to contain the meaning that was there in the first manifestation or presencing, and they break down. Analysis and language, in other words, reach their limits, shavirat ha kelim. The meaning has to be returned to the right hemisphere to be restored by understanding it as a whole again. This synthesis engenders a new, richer, wholeness, tikkun. I have compared this with the process whereby we learn a piece of music, initial receptivity, fragmentation and analysis in the pursuit of technical proficiency, followed by a new synthesis in which the previous phase is entirely banished from mind. Yet, crucially, no phase of the process is dispensable. Every phase, including fragmentation and analysis at one stage, the shattering of the inadequate vessels, played its part. The hemispheres in omnipotence and omniscience.